Hi, I'm Flip Nicklin. Welcome to Humpback Chronicles. Jim Darling and I came back to Maui in 1996, and the first year it was two guys in a borrowed boat, thanks to Mark Robinson. The next year we were part of a BBC film and bought a boat to work with them that was an old and beat up boat, but we're still using it. So 1997. And by 1999, it wasn't just two guys and an old boat. We also had Meagan Jones to join the operation. And in 1999, National Geographic did my second story on humpback whales. Listening to humpbacks. I think it's important to note that this story in National Geographic was based on new published science. So we were looking at whales, studying whales, publishing about whales. Our funding came from a little money from BBC when they were working with us, some support from National Geographic Magazine, quite a bit of support from National Geographic's Grosvenor Council, and direct donations for West Coast Whale, which was a Canadian nonprofit. It became clear at that time that if we were to continue and do the things we hope to do, we needed a more straightforward nonprofit status in the United States. And so in 2001, Jim Darling, Meagan Jones, and Flip Nicklin, that's me, and an old boat called Never Satisfied became Whale Trust. We became Whale Trust for a number of different reasons, and I'm sure each of us had our own hopes and dreams and thoughts about what we might become, what we were committing to. In the beginning, our mission is to promote, support, and conduct scientific research on whales and the marine environment. We believe that science lies at the heart of environmental education and conservation. As part of my commitment to Whale Trust and the future of looking at whales and telling their stories, I bought us a new boat, the Charles B., named after Charles B. Sutherland, a man who encouraged and supported whale research from the very beginning in the early 70s. For my part, I hope to be part of Whale Trust as a research photographer to tell the story of whales through scientific research. So far, that relationship has exceeded my greatest expectations.
A lot of it had to do with it was a route to get to where we wanted to go in terms of our research interests, behavior and communication and ecology, increasing understanding of the lives of whales. That route was not really there, and so we needed to build one. It may come as a surprise with all the popularity of whales, just how few funds are actually directed towards research. The traditional support sources, government, universities, for different reasons, and with a few exceptions, do not really exist for our kind of work. Government money almost entirely goes to management issues, which usually arise from crises or court cases, and the projects wane when media lose interest or the next crisis arises. And in universities, with a rare exception again, there's been a steady decline in the interest of support for any kind of wildlife biology. By the time Whale Trust was founded, we'd been studying whales for a long enough time that we had a pretty good idea of how little we know about the animals. I'd have much rather there been some existing organization saying, here's the kind of support you need to get out there and do this job. Now get going. But it wasn't there, and not in the form or at the level required to make a dent, to make a difference. So, Whale Trust. Now, we still have a long way to go to reach the level that we want to reach, but we are heading in the right direction.
For me, when I think back about the beginnings of Whale Trust, I think back to the first dinner I had with Flip and Jim. And I remember it was back in early 1998, and we were sitting around a little table in Lahaina. And I remember Flip casually mentioning that we should consider starting our own nonprofit organization. And I remember thinking at the time, wow, that's a really cool idea. And who knows where this relationship is going to go. So I think it was at that first dinner that we recognized the commonality between us. We realized that we all came about what we were doing with a slightly different perspective, but we all shared that basic core belief that scientific research lies at the foundation of education, conservation, and management. Without scientific research, you don't have meaningful education or conservation programs. And I think it was really with that core belief that the seeds of Whale Trust were first planted. It was several years later when a very special donor came to us and gave us an opportunity that we couldn't refuse. They were ready to make a contribution to Flip, Jim, and myself if we wanted to start a nonprofit organization. So here it was several years later, but that dream that had first been planted around that little table in Lahaina had finally come to fruition. And it was that year in 2001 that Whale Trust was born. Back then, Flip, Jim, and I were having fun in the summer up in Alaska, leading research expeditions aboard the Island Roamer. And it was aboard the Island Roamer trip that summer that we first launched Whale Trust, that the infrastructure and founding board members of Whale Trust were first formed. I think everyone on that trip was excited by the possibilities, and they really helped us to think it through and form the foundation for which all of our future programs would spring. When I look back on that Island Roamer trip and I think about the people who joined us that summer, I think about how important they have become in Whale Trust over the years. Karen and Pat Cochran, who were founding board members and continue to serve on the board today, were part of that trip. Margaret Sears and Dan Lindley. Margaret was one of our first board members. She was the head of development for National Geographic at the time, and she ended up joining our board, helping us with our development and fundraising and mentoring me over the years. And also on that trip was Gary Weber. Gary has been such a huge part of Whale Trust since even before Whale Trust was born. And I know somebody who's very special to all of us.
In those early days, I have some of my fondest memories. It was really about the three of us, alongside with Jason Sturgis, who we oftentimes refer to as our honorary founding member, conducting research that we felt was important, conducting independent research. And in those times, Jim and I were leading the research, and Flip and Jason were working with us to capture it on film so we could share our story with others.
The Joneses, Alan and Ann, have been a big part of Whale Trust from the very beginning. They were along on that fateful Alaska trip when Whale Trust really got its start. Alan Jones has taken a leadership role at Whale Trust from that beginning, being the head of our board of directors since that time. He has been supportive and insightful and has played a great role in the growth and evolution of Whale Trust.
Of course, my involvement with Whale Trust was heavily influenced by my daughter, Meagan's commitment. Whale Trust's roots are grounded in the principled discipline of scientific research, evidenced in the careers of Dr. Jim Darling, Flip Nicklin, and for the last 20 plus years, Dr. Meagan Jones. It was their vision of excellence that excited me. This team has brought in others like Jason Sturgis and Dana Garland, and collectively, they've been dedicated to documented research, particularly of humpback whales, but importantly, actively collaborating with others in the field. Possibly most important, there's a commitment to sharing those learnings with the public. And the team has achieved many milestones since its founding in 2001, including publishing 8 peer-reviewed papers on humpback whale behavior. There have been 4 documentary films, including partnering with people like the BBC and IMAX. There have been 2 feature National Geographic articles on their work, and the team has put together 14 consecutive annual Whale Tales conferences, which introduce world-renowned presenters of research to audiences of up to 1,000 per session. It seems to me there's a connection that's evident to most people in the presence of humpback whales. It's almost spiritual. Understanding the depth of that connection is vital to grasping the marine environment and its connections to life on Earth. It's what Whale Trust does every year, and it's been my privilege to be involved.
This episode is about the beginning of Whale Trust, but it's just the beginning. Thank you, and thank you very much for your support of Whale Trust. Bye-bye.